Not so good news if you're following the Under 19 Women's World Cup. It is the Super 6 stage, and unfortunately, India have been crushed by Australia in the first Super 6 encounter at the Northwest University ground in Potchefstroom. Remember, India were playing all their games at Villamore Park, Benoni, and now they have shifted to Potchefstroom. And the change in venue has drastically brought about a change in fortunes. India were absolutely crushed by Australia. They were bowled out for 87, and in response, Australia have chased the target down very easily. Although this is a big loss, it is nothing, not much has to be worried about for India, because their next game is against Sri Lanka, who have somehow managed to get through to the Super 6 after suffering plenty of losses in the earlier league games. So this is how the match turned out at the Northwest University ground in Potchefstroom. Australia won the toss and they chose to bowl, and immediately they had India in all sorts of trouble at 8 for 74. The highest scorer in the entire innings was Shweta Sehrawat from Delhi. Because remember, Shweta Sehrawat had impressed in the game against South Africa, and she also did her best in the game against against Scotland. But unfortunately here she was the top scorer with 21. Shefali Verma fell for 8. Gongadi Trisha, who had hit a 50 against Scotland, she also fell for 4 runs. Sonia Mendia for 2. Richa Ghosh fell for 7. And then Parshvi Chopra for 8. Hrishita Basu was the only other scorer who had managed to get to double digits in the Indian team. And consider this, Shweta Sehrawat had hit 20 boundaries in her knock of 92 against South Africa. In this entire innings, the Indian team managed only 10 boundaries. And that was the prime difference with an Australian team who are really getting into their own after a shock upset against Bangladesh in their first game. So India were woeful and they managed to fold up for 87 in 18.5 overs. It was Millie Illingworth who took 2 for 12, followed by Maggie Clark, who also took 2 for 18. But the star was Shiana Ginger with 3 for 13, with Ella Hayward and Reese McKenna taking a wicket apiece. In response, Australia just had no problems. Kate Pelly with 17 of 13, and the top scorer being Amy Smith with 26 of 25, and Claire Moore with 25 of 28. Because of this, now Australia are in pole position to qualify for the semi-finals. And there was a comment that I got that, are India out of the World Cup? India innovate? No. India are not yet out of the Under 19 World Cup, because the format is such that 6 teams from the Super 6 stage, the top 2 from each team, from each group, they qualify for the semi-finals. So Australia, India and Sri Lanka are in this particular group. England, West Indies and the other team are in the other group. So the top 2 from each group qualify. So India versus Sri Lanka game is a virtual knockout. If India loses that game against Sri Lanka, they are eliminated from the World Cup. And so that is the situation now. India are not yet out despite a bad loss to Australia, but they still have hope for the semi-finals. And remember, the semi-finals will happen tomorrow. The last league game for India will happen tomorrow. India versus Sri Lanka at Potchefstroom. So if India beats Sri Lanka, they are through to the semi-final. If Australia also beats Sri Lanka, these 2 teams are in there. So it's again very simple, the format. Top 2 teams from each of the Super 6 groups, they reach the semi-final. And it's a straight knockout after that. So India not yet out of the Under 19 World Cup. It's a bad loss that they have had. India versus Sri Lanka now is a virtual knockout. Whoever wins that, they go into the semi-final. Australia have all but assured themselves of a semi-final spot after this crushing win over India. So Australia have beaten India by 7 wickets, and India will face Sri Lanka on 22nd in the Under 19 Women's World Cup Super 6 encounter. So that is the situation right now. Bad day. And for Australia, what a redemption story it is. After being knocked out, after losing by 3 runs to Bangladesh in their first league stage match, they have staged a remarkable comeback and are now almost on the cusp of reaching the semi-finals of the Under 19 Women's World Cup. India will have to beat Sri Lanka to qualify now. Thank you so much, folks, for joining us for this live. We'll be back with more updates on sports today. Press the like, comment, and share button. We are also there on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Don't forget to download the SportsTalk mobile app, because that's where you'll get all the cricketing highlights of the SA20, ILT20, CPL, BBL, as well as Australian Open tennis highlights and the Hockey World Cup highlights as well. Thank you.